Today we're going to take a look at how you can utilize routing within your ASP.NET web applications. The routing engine, which was originally designed for the ASP.NET MVC framework, has recently been added to the core ASP.NET Web Forms framework as well. This means that although I'm showing you how you can utilize the routing engine inside of an MVC application, you can take this knowledge and transfer it directly to your Web Forms application. We're going to take a look at the basics of routing today, and we should be able to answer the following questions by the end of the episode. What is routing? How is a route defined? How can I create and use my own custom route? Let's go ahead and get started. When you create an MVC application, it will by default create a default route for you. And the default route is right here. Now, routes are comprised of three parts. The first is the name. The first you see here is called default. This name must be unique, and it's what identifies each individual route. The second part are the URL parameters, and this is the pattern, the URL pattern in which the routing engine will look at and look for to try to determine which controller and potentially what action needs to be invoked to handle your request. And the last part is the defaults for the route. These are useful in case values cannot be extracted from the URL, and it will allow the routing engine to say, you know what, if I can't find the controller or match it, go ahead and use the home controller or the index action. Or if there's no ID, use 5. So let's go ahead and create an action that will actually consume this route. Now I'm going to go ahead and have this just return and render the index view because we don't have a view created that's called SumRoute. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. So if I provide the route 1, 2, 3, you'll see that actually hits my handler and puts the word hello, and it does re-render the index screen. That tells me that the routing engine, using the default route, found this method and was able to process it just fine. Now that works, and that's pretty cool. Now what if we want to create our own custom route? How do we go about doing that? Let's go ahead and do that for this episode. Now I'm going to create a route, and I'm going to call it, my route. I want it to be unique. I'm going to leave the control and the action as is, and I'll explain what I'm doing here in a second. And I'm going to say this is going to be a part number, and I'm going to add something outside in here, and it'll be part description. Now these curly brackets that you see around the things like the controller and action and all these things, these are actually placeholders. And what this will do is allow you to generalize your route. If I didn't want to generalize and I want to say that my route only works on a particular controller, I could do this. And then it would only route to the home controller or even an action, if I want to, create an action called custom route. In many scenarios, it's better to just leave it as the general until you actually need to route to a specific controller action. And I'm going to go ahead and remove the default for ID because we actually don't have a parameter called ID. Now let's save this. Let's bounce back over to my home controller. I'm just going to bounce back to my index view again, and I'm just going to output the part number in the description. Let's put a breakpoint right here. Now, if I run this again, I should be able to route to this when I provide this information in the URL. So I've typed in my controller called home, my route, and I'm going to give it 1, 2, 3, and then let's just say some description. And if I hit enter, I should be able to route to my route, and it did. And it put in my part number 1, 2, 3, and my description, some description. And it redirected to my index, and I show my index view, and we can see the values. Now this worked because everything was in line and is perfect the way it needed to be. Now what if I'd done something like this? Transposed some description in 123. Well, now I'm going to get an exception because it can't find a route that matches the values that I provided. And in fact, it's going to try to push in some description into part number. And it's going to give me a null or a non-nullable type can't be converted exception. So basically say I can't convert this string to an integer. And you'll get this kind of exception. Now what if I do something altogether different? And I provide too many parameters. Well, in that case, it'll actually tell me that it can't find an action to handle my request. Now, if I remove that third one, it can actually work because in that case, part numbers 123 and description 123 can be turned into a string. So it actually will find something and it will map appropriately. So we've seen how you can create a custom route. Not that hard, not that complicated. You've seen how you can provide it with various parameters and how you can look at the URL and see how you can provide those values on the URL and how the routing engine will handle it. And I hope that by taking a look at this, you can see how creating your own route is very straightforward and very simple in most scenarios. Now, in future episodes, we'll take a look at how to utilize routing a little bit more complex and more advanced scenarios. But this should be enough to allow you to very simply and easily create your own custom routes. Thanks, and hope you learned something.